It is a pleasure to have you here with us today. I wanted to start by sharing a bit of your background with our guests, a lot of whom in this audience know you, but some who don't. And so I want them to have the good fortune of knowing where you came from. In 2023, President Garry Jenkins became the 9th ever and first Black president of Bates College, which was founded in 1855. Garry brings with him a remarkable background as a legal scholar, educator, and nonprofit governance expert. Before coming to Bates, he served as dean and William S. Patty Professor of Law at the University of Minnesota Law School. It's a lot of words, where he was known for strengthening the school's commitment to diversity, innovation, and public service. Earlier in his career, he taught at The Ohio State University and worked at the Ford Foundation, focusing on civil rights and social justice initiatives. What makes President Jenkins stand out isn't just his impressive resume, it's the way he leads in his career and on campus. So we met a few weeks ago toward the end of summer break. I had the pleasure of meeting him at his office. I got a tour of the administrative offices and had a yummy salad in the cafeteria. And there was just this anticipation of the new semester coming forward. So how are things? The semester started. How's it going?
Great, thank you. First off, thank you for having me and being a part of this wonderful occasion and series. It's a real honor. The year is off to a great start. First off, I'm so glad you enjoyed your salad.
Mary gave me all the tips. I got all the tips.
So, well, I have to say, the food at Bates is actually really amazing.
I know, there's so much competition. Let me just get it out of the way. Bates won the soccer game against Bowdoin last night, and Bowdoin was here not that long ago talking about how excellent their food was. So, let's just get it out of the way, okay?
Well, I will say a recent poll, we were top 10 in the country in terms of food. A little
competition.
Just want to know. But no, the year is off to a great start. The students are wonderful. We brought in 496 new first-year students. That always energizes the campus. 10 transfer students, some new faculty, new staff. So things are wonderful. To be honest, the weather's been great. That keeps everyone in a good mood when that happens. But it's been wonderful, and we had the celebration of 150 years of Bates football this weekend. So we already had a wonderful event with alumni coming back and a dinner and a pretty thrilling game where we had a comeback double overtime win. So yes, things are, the mood is good on campus.
I didn't want to leave campus, truth be told, right? Like, I feel like in this season, being on campus with you, I took my kids back to school. I'm like, I want to go back to school. Like, if we only knew then what we know now. So you've had 2 years being part of the Bates community. What was the moment that you knew that this was the right place for you?
Wow, that's a great question. Really, it started pretty early on, actually, with some really wonderful conversations with the search committee. And at some point, it just kind of transitions from, oh, this is a possibility. They can't possibly be interested in me. But you take the phone call, and then that leads to another phone call. And then that leads to a meeting. And then that leads to another meeting. And then before you know it, you're sitting there talking to your partner and saying, I want to move to Maine. I really want to do this. And really, it was pretty early on for me. I went to a small liberal arts college, even though my career, as you mentioned, had been at Ohio State and the University of Minnesota. But I knew the magic that happens at a place like Bates. And it was something that I quickly fell in love with and decided I wanted to be a part of.
So you've had such an interesting journey before arriving at Bates, so let's rewind a bit. We'll go back. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up. What was your family like? What values shaped you most as a kid?
Sure. So I grew up in New Jersey, born and raised, and thank you. And my parents were the first in their family to graduate from college. My mom became a high school history teacher. My dad was a computer programmer, although he also taught part-time in the community college. So education was always a central value in my home. It really made the difference for our family. I have a younger brother who's 7 years younger. He's now a sports executive, and but I think that is certainly the heart of our family. Also, this is kind of post civil rights. Uh, we're part of that generation, second wave, if you will. And we moved when I was 5 years old. My parents moved to a bedroom community where uh, we were among the first Black families in South Orange and New Jersey, and that was a also a changing experience to be kind of exposed to a whole different world, and so yeah, that's kind of where it started.
So was it your parents as educators that made you realize the power of education? Was that even in your mindset as a young kid?
I think it was. As I said, it was part of our narrative and the important role that education played in their lives and the lives of our family. So I always knew education and higher education, particularly, was important. And I went through public schools, K through 8, and then I moved to a private school, and that was also part of prioritizing education, and that was a stretch for my family. That was not something that was an easy decision, but again, I think it was part of the values and something my parents intuitively understood, and something that also I think I understood and wanted as well.
So, in your early years, did you think of yourself as a leader? Was there something that kind of pushed you into a leadership path?
All right, I'm gonna be honest. I was one of those kids that was in every club, and uh, and was on the school newspaper, and was middle school student body president, and things like that. That was
So,
me.
yes.
Yes, and then went on to high school and was a leader in a lot of activities. So yeah, that was an important part of my experience and ultimately my identity. And I think in some ways, partly when I became a scholar and was teaching law, one of the things that I did was started teaching leadership in law schools. And really, we were among the first law schools in the country. Of course, business schools, public policy schools have been doing it for years, but it's not something that law schools have intentionally or explicitly put into the curriculum. And I think certainly the seeds of that probably go back to my experience early on.
Love that. I love that. So talk a little bit about your college experience. You mentioned it before. You went to a liberal arts school. So talk to us a little bit about your college experience and how that may or may not have influenced your career path.
Right. So I went to Haverford College, which is a small liberal arts college, not unlike Bates, that is right outside of Philadelphia, founded by Quakers. So the first college in the country actually founded by Quakers. So it's an outstanding academic institution, but also has a set of values that stem from its Quaker heritage that really spoke to me. And as a result, I was deeply supported and engaged as a student, but also got to work with faculty intimately, and that was really a wonderful experience to me. The liberal arts experience to be exposed to a range of idea. High school is generally in this country rather regimented, right? The set of classes you're taking is essentially pretty prescribed. And then you get to college and you have the opportunity to explore, particularly at a small residential liberal arts college. And that was really something that was transformative for me. So as a result, it other than my parents, I always say, I think Haverford is the institution that influenced me the most. When I think about my leadership, I draw a lot from the Quaker values of consensus, which are really, I think, actually really effective in higher education because we are a consensus-oriented field, and I learned all that at Haverford. So even though my career as an academic had been at very large research-oriented universities, public flagships, Ohio State, University of Minnesota, when the opportunity to become a president came, I thought, actually, I think I'd like to do it at the kind of college that I went to, and that I think is the gold standard for undergraduate education. And so to have the opportunity to come to Bates and to do it is a dream come true.
So you went to law school.
I did go to
So
law school.
talk a little bit about post-grad.
Sure. So post-grad, worked for a couple of years out of college and then decided to go to graduate school. I did the joint degree at Harvard, so a law degree and a master's of public policy from the Kennedy School. And that too was a great experience. It was intellectually challenging and enriching. The quantitative focus at the Kennedy School, a more qualitative focus at the law school, but both deeply analytical, challenging. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. And I was ultimately editor-in-chief of the Harvard Civil Rights, Civil Liberties.
That's why we get along so well.
Law Review, yes. So really, really a powerful time there and some wonderful mentors as well.
So you went from law school to becoming a law professor, and then into nonprofit governance, and then back to law school?
So I was I was a lawyer practicing first. So that's really where I did some nonprofit governance work. I was chief operating officer and general counsel of the Goldman Sachs Foundation. So the grant-making arm of the company. As I like to say, there are worse jobs in the world than giving away Goldman Sachs' money. But the call to become an academic didn't go away. As wonderful as that job was, that organization was, the itch to be an academic, to think, to write. One of the joys of being an academic, being a scholar, is that you have the opportunity to write and think about whatever you want to think about. There's a kind of intellectual autonomy that comes with being an academic that is really rare in life, and that was something that was really attractive. As well as to get students excited about the things that I was excited about, nonprofit law, corporate law, and ultimately leadership education.
Sure.
Drew me there.
So all of that definitely, put you where you are, and we understand, I think, the liberal arts connection. But what about Bates's mission and community convinced you that that was the right next step for you?
Sure. So first off, Bates has a really unique history. Bates was founded in 1855, so 6 years before the Civil War, and was one of the first colleges to really embrace a vision of higher education that we almost take for granted today. And that is the idea of men and women and people of all races educated together. It was a crazy idea at the time. It was a radical idea. Fewer than a dozen colleges in the country had that vision. But Bates did. And out of that flow, I think, a really interesting legacy and a sharp mission that really excited me. And I said, this is a really special place, and that values community, that's small, that has the values of academic excellence, of course, at its core, but is also about educating the whole student. That's about a community that brings people together, where people support one another, and think about how we can go off and make a difference in the world, how we can use the skills, the experiences that we have to become leaders in our field and the professions that we enter and the organizations and communities. And I thought strengthening, nurturing, supporting this place would be a valuable endeavor, would be meaningful for me. And I think that to have the opportunity to be a leader in an organization that you think is making a difference is pretty powerful.
Amen. So you mentioned Bates talks a lot about educating the whole person. I guess let's, what does that mean for a generation of students that are facing such a complex world?
Wow, that's a great question. And it changes, and it changes. So certainly it starts with academics, helping students learn to think critically, to analyze data, right? To make arguments, to write effectively, to be able to to think for themselves. That's at the heart of what a liberal arts education is, and that's where it starts. But it doesn't end there. It also is about exposure and being and exploring and being open to multitudes, to a variety of things. So we want everyone to understand the value and importance of art in their lives. You don't have to, that's not just for the art majors, but it's for everyone, right? To think about how it enriches us, how it challenges us, how it encourages us to ask questions, right? And just like we want the art students to understand the sciences, right? To be able to think about data and what it means and how it works and things like that, quantitative analysis, to really be well-rounded. And then it kind of goes out beyond that to the whole person, to preparing for a life that's well-lived, a life of citizenship, a life of leadership, of service to community. And we start to ask those questions and get students thinking along those lines and support them along the way and help them grow. There are things, that we uniquely do in I think residential liberal arts colleges, and part of the reason that we invest in things like athletics and others are not just so we can win games, although winning is nice. Winning is nice, winning is fun, but it's also about helping our students grow in confidence, grow in teamwork, and take those skills for a lifetime. That's part of the whole person, and that's really what we try to do.
Bates has such a distinctive identity, and you've talked about it being grounded in care. So can you share an example of when you've seen that care in action on campus?
Wow. That's a great question too, and I think we absolutely are grounded in care, and I think it manifests itself in so many different ways. It manifests itself in care for the world. So examples include our deep commitment to service learning. We have an amazing center on campus called the Harwood Center for Community Partnerships that works with nonprofits and government agencies in Lewiston and the region, and there's so many examples of, whether we're working with a nonprofit on a project or report to help them, that's care for the world. But it also is about caring for each other, the way that our students care for each other, our faculty care for students. We have a 9-to-1 student-faculty ratio, so students and faculty really get to know one another, and are really mentored by faculty, and so that is the way care is exhibited, and that includes when students are having struggles or having problems, and how we gather around and support those students. There are so many examples there, and then I'd say it's also examples are in belonging and the work that we do to make everyone feel like that they're a part of the community, and that everyone can thrive. That's ultimately what it's about. Bates is academically rigorous, but it's not a competitive place. The students aren't competitive with one another. They all want each other to succeed. And I see that all the time in the way that students, support one another. So it's actually more 1,000 little ways that I think that I see it lived and experienced. And it's something that the students protect. They want to maintain the culture that they have. And so, I'll sometimes, the funniest thing you can ever do as a college president, I think, is overhear the tour guides, what the tour guides say about the institution. And I have to tell you, sometimes I want to send an email and say, do we want to, is that really what we want to say? But of course, it's their experience. You have to let them say what they want. But no, it's certainly, they'll talk about the kind of student that thrives, the kind of essentially student that they want, the student that should come to Bates and be successful. And it's really, I think, reinforcing and attracting students who buy in to that vision.
Well, it sounds to me like it takes a president to help kind of create that sense of belonging. And so you told me a story about being at a game and the students welcoming you into the student section. Do you want to tell that story?
Sure.
I love this story.
So it's the women's basketball. We're in the NCAA tournament, Division III tournament. We've got our bid. And the way the tournament works is you've got little pods. So 4 teams are sent to a location, and they're always sent to the top seed of the group. And so for the first time ever, Bates is hosting. So it's really excited. The whole campus is energized. We're hosting this tournament game. And I'm doing what I normally do if I'm able to go to a game, which is I sit with the parents. I sit with the parents, and we're cheering, and the students are doing their own thing. And then at some point in the game, I hear, "We want Garry. We want Garry. And at first wait, is that my name? How someone, you're not really listening. And then all of a sudden you hear your name, and then what are they saying? We want Garry. They were asking me to come join them in the student section, to come cheer with them and interact with them. And
I don't ever remember cheering for my college president to come sit in the student section.
So it was really a lot of fun, and I was very touched by it. Yes, because I loved, as I said, I loved my college experience. I loved Haverford, but the college president was not with us in the student section.
Exactly. Well, yeah. So Bates is not just a campus, it's part of Lewiston and it's part of Maine, and I want to talk a little bit about that connection. So your inauguration was postponed in the wake of the tragic Lewiston shooting. We have Mayor Carl here with us. An event that deeply affected Lewiston and Maine as a community. How did that moment shape your first year as president? How did it influence the way you think about leading a college through times of crisis?
Yeah, that was a hard moment, Stephanie. There's no question about it. It was obviously terrible for our community, and something that we're still moving forward from, in many ways stronger, of course, but it still hurts, and it certainly did at the time. For me, it was in my first few months. So to be honest, I was still, kind of, what's everyone's name? And really at that stage when this true crisis happened. So it was really about how do we partner with the city and the state at the time? How do we get information? Paramount was safety of our students and staff. Unfortunately, one of our staff members was injured, thankfully survived, but was injured. But of course, getting information initially and then communicating with our campus, communicating with our families, real challenges there. And then, of course, the multi 3-day lockdown essentially created its own set of challenges. Now, even things like when there's a lockdown, most people are at their home. It's inconvenient, it's scary, of course, but you're in your home. You have access to food, your medications, etc. Of course, when it happened on a college campus, you had the first phase where, I got to tell you, 8 o'clock on a college campus, students are everywhere. They're not already ensconced in their dorms. They're all over campus, all over town. So first it was the logistics of supporting moving students. But then as the 3-day lockdown, things like food. We have one dining hall. You have to leave your dorm to go. So navigating that and how safe is it? What can we do? How do we work with officials to do that? So there was a lot of work, and then of course dealing with all the anxiety through there. So that was a challenge. And then there's afterwards. You're not done with a crisis. So I was dean of the University of Minnesota Law School when George Floyd was murdered, and that created a different set of challenges. But because of that, I knew how things can continue to affect students afterwards. So even in this leadership role, there's a pastoral element to it. I don't want to overstate that. Obviously, I'm not providing religious guidance, but I think you understand the care of a community collectively that one has to do. So thinking about that, how do we hold the community together and make sure those who need support, and there are going to be varying levels of support that people need. And then thinking about what are the responsibilities of the institution moving forward to your community that you're a part of. And again, that's something else from my Minnesota experience that I tried to bring here. And of course, had so many wonderful staff and colleagues and partners that we all leaned on each other and worked together to do some things, including a wonderful Halloween program that now we've continued to do. Mayor Carl, right in the aftermath, we were worried that people might not want to go out and trick or treat at the time. So we opened up the Bates campus. Our students got into costume and interacted with kids, and people could feel safe and build community ties. And we've continued that tradition.
I remember that being one of the happy stories that we were reporting at the time in the yes. Sun Journal. So thank you for your leadership during that time. So I guess talk a little bit about how Bates's relationship with Lewiston and Maine shaped the student experience, right? This school could be anywhere, but it's here. So talk a little bit about how Maine.
Yeah, right. So, I think place is an integral part of any perpetual anchor institution, and we are both of those things, right? As a college, we're a perpetual institution. We plan to exist forever, and also we're an anchor institution for our community in Lewiston, Auburn. So we really look to partner with others and to really support and lift up the community, just as the community lifts up us up. Right? Say that exactly. But we lift each other up. That we rise together. That was actually the video that started. The clips were from the inauguration speech, and the theme of that speech, the title of that speech, was "Rising Together," and that had lots of meanings, lots of connotations. But one of those was about Bates and Lewiston together. That when we do well, they do well. When the city does well, we do well. It works both ways. So it's about connecting our students to Lewiston is a huge piece. We're of course a major employer as well, and to partner. We I mentioned the Harwood Center earlier. It's really remarkable. I think of all of the small liberal arts colleges in the country, we do service learning better than anyone else, hands down, hands down. And that's in part because we take a real partnership model. I think there are some institutions that have a history maybe of coming in and they want to define and solve the problem with their vision exclusively. And I think that we take a very different approach, which is to work and partner with the community and kind of be part of the grassroots, ground up solution. And our faculty, our students are engaged in that work, which is really exciting and also makes for, the liberal arts institution of today, certainly at Bates, it's not just the ivory tower. We are essentially, that's hands-on learning, right? That's applied learning in a liberal arts context, which is really exciting and innovative. And of course, those skills translate, right? And so I tell students, yes, you've done this wonderful service project, but you've also done consulting work, right? That when you've done a project in your class for the nonprofit and help them with their study, that's not just service work, although it is, and that's important and valuable, but that's essentially, consulting. So if you want to go into management consulting, you can translate that work too. That there's so much connection to this and what we do. But I think ultimately it's about lifting us all up.
So higher education is changing fast. What challenges keep you up at night? Where do you see Bates uniquely positioned to lead? I know this is very loaded.
Well, I don't sleep well. No, no. Look, I don't want to avoid the elephant in the room. There are real federal threats right now to higher education, and that certainly is one thing that keeps me up at night. What have been a set of long-term relationships and expectations and norms are being frayed and are changing fast, often without notice, and often in ways that aren't consistent with certainly past practices, or at least certainly even understanding of law, and that's hard. That is hard for any institution, including higher education. So that certainly is something that I think a lot about. I think about resources to match our ambition. The thing about Bates is that we are among the very best liberal arts colleges in the country. And our faculty are brilliant, and we want to provide the best, the most, and add, which is our nature. And there's so many wonderful ideas and things that we could do to serve the college, to serve our community, to partner with others, but those require resources. And so now that of course is a big part of my job. That's a part of being president, is to talk to people about the future, about the vision of the institution, about philanthropy and the role that philanthropy plays in supporting American institutions. And for private higher education institutions, that is the primary driver of excellence. And so how can we play a role in being the best version of ourselves, to increase access, to to do all the wonderful things that we want to do, to develop new programs, centers, things like that, require resources. And so I think a lot about those.
There are so many parallels, including this one. When you think about honoring the traditions of Bates, how do you balance that with the need for innovation?
So I'm a big. I think innovation is really important, and actually, it was. I didn't mention this earlier, but it is one of the things that attracted me to Bates is its history of innovation. The Harwood Center is innovative. We have something called the Center for Purposeful Work, which is essentially blew up the career services model and developed a new one. I can explain more if we have time or interest, but it is extraordinarily innovative and effective. 40 years ago, we went test optional. A lot of schools went test optional during COVID, but we've been at it for 40 years, and that's innovative. So it's about tapping into that history, that part of our DNA, in ways that are bold and exciting. There's a phrase that I love, a leadership phrase that I've heard once that said, be bold, everywhere be bold, but not too bold. So I always think about that, right? You want to be innovative, you want to be bold, but just bold enough.
I love that. I also have so many more questions, but I do want to give the audience the opportunity to ask a couple. So we'll take maybe 2, maybe 3 questions from the audience. And no, we did not coordinate. That's good.
This is a version of a question that you were asked not too long ago, but I kind of fixated on it, so I would like to ask it. The current reality for American colleges and universities is quite different than it used to be. And I think this is due largely to the 2 following forces.
Go ahead, they have that.
Okay. First, the federal government changing policies and attitudes regarding colleges and universities. And then secondly, just the public. Public seems to be much less supportive, much more skeptical, has much less regard for colleges and universities than was the case previously. What specific actions is your college taking to meet this new reality?
So thank you for that question. So I think we're doing a couple of things. One, we're trying to communicate more and communicate better about the value that we add and not take it for granted. I think, to be honest, for a long time, college degree, its importance, the value was almost taken as given. And I think that we need to do more to communicate that. We need to tell our story. We need to talk about how we're reaching out, how we're doing the work that we're doing to expand opportunities, because that's what college does. It expands opportunities for all kinds of people. It expands opportunities to literally come to college. So, for example, we just partnered with a wonderful new organization called QuestBridge, which works nationally to find students from low-income backgrounds and provide access to America's very best colleges. So, we're doing that work, but we also help expand minds. We help expand opportunities for all. College is not about teaching people what to think. It's about teaching people how to think, and that's really important. And I think we've lost the thread a little bit on that. I think so. I think that's part of the work that we have to do. The good news is that if all institutions, I think, link arms and do that and communicate with their communities, communicate with their alumni, that there are opportunities for us to do so, but that's just the start. But the idea is that we've got to enlist partners, that we can't do it on our own. It's going to take, this is going to be citizen to citizen action. And so what we can do is we can enlist others to join us in this fight and talking about the value, the importance that college had to you, to your life, to your family, and really tell that story. Talk to our politicians, talk to your neighbors, and really help change a cultural shift, because that's what we need. I mean, this is part of a pattern that's been happening for actually a really long time, right? When you look at support for public education, for example, and how, boy, has that changed over the past, 40 years, 50 years, right? So I was dean of a public law school, public institution before. The percentage of aid that came, or support that came from the state 40 years ago compared to now, dramatically different, right? When I left the University of Minnesota Law School, the percent from the state was in single digits as a percentage. So this is part of a much longer narrative, and we've got to really dig in and work together to change that. But it's not an overnight type of solution.
President Jenkins, I'm really glad you came to Bates and to Lewiston, and I'm really happy that the students love you, and I want you to know that Lewiston loves you too.
Thank you.
Good morning. You didn't think you were going to get through this without talking about AI, did you? So I'd love to hear how AI is playing a role and where you see the future of AI with Bates.
So I think AI, it's still developing, right? It's still new, but I think it's the future for sure. And so I think, like most institutions, we're figuring out how to adapt. What does that mean for us? And there's certainly a lot of experimentation and interest in that will evolve. I think ultimately, I think of it as a technology tool, and much the same way higher education had to adapt when the internet was a new thing, and we didn't know what that quite meant for higher education, but we pivoted and we adapted. I think a lot of that will actually happen with AI and with society. And in many ways, I think the liberal arts are even more valuable, even more important, right? To be able to think, to analyze, to see what you're given and what does that mean. At Bates, we have scholars who are studying the impact. What does it mean for what biases does it introduce? What does it mean for the environment and energy consumption? We have a new major called Digital Computational Studies. And so I think this is actually a really exciting time to be expanding that major and give us opportunities to expand in that area as AI is growing, so we can incorporate AI to be honest, more easily than maybe some other institutions that already have built-in programs. So I see a lot of opportunity for us and for the future in it, and a lot of the building blocks, right? These large language models are from neuroscience, psychology. Those are other fields that we study and that we're preparing students to go to graduate schools in. So, right, we may not be um, developing the next model, but we're preparing folks who can go on to study and work in those organizations into the future. So I think it's here to stay, and we're going to be, part of helping us understand the implications.
We got time for one more.
Thank you, Stuart. President Jenkins, the plight of the people in Gaza has caused a great deal of chagrin and sympathy and concern among young people and as well as old people across the country, which is often expressed by students in various ways at the various colleges. How is Bates dealing with this phenomenon of the sympathy of the students without being accused of anti-Semitism?
So our students are deeply engaged and concerned about all that's happening in the world. And of course, this is a major issue for the current generation, and our students are no exception. We have students actually on our campus who come from the Middle East, including Gaza. So those conversations are happening on our campus. We're also having conversations about anti-Semitism. And so I think that we're trying to find the middle ground and make sure folks are talking to one another and having discussion and understanding. And our team has worked really hard to partner with our students and helping everyone feel like they can express their view, but also be respected at the same time. And it's not easy because these are difficult topics for anyone, but also because we have to remind ourselves these are young people, and the colleges are the most diverse space in the country. That is fact. People will come, where the high schools they come from, the towns they come from are less diverse, and the places that they'll go after are going to be less diverse. So college is the time where it all kind of comes together, and people are still learning. People are still learning how to communicate. And sometimes what happens is people make mistakes. They don't do it as effectively as maybe they would like in hindsight, as we would like, or as we would do it. And we've got to understand that. And I wish that there was a little more accepting and understanding of that when we are a little too quick, I think, to criticize what's happening on some campuses. But on our campus, I've been really proud of the way that our students have engaged with each other with respect, and who, but are not putting their heads down and ignoring what's happening in the world.
Your passion is really inspiring. Thank you. Okay, rapid fire. Rapid fire. I've got 2 questions. We've got like 2 minutes. What makes you most optimistic about this generation of students?
The students are kind, they're thoughtful, they are interested in making a difference, and in whatever way that means for them, and they're open to that exploration, and that makes me excited for the future.
What is one piece of advice that you'd give to other leaders navigating in times of rapid change?
Oh gosh.
Did I stump the president?
It's just a one piece of advice. I feel like I got to make it really good. Look, I think ultimately it's build a great team around you. For any leader, it starts with the team. And as much as you may have great ideas, you want people who are going to test those ideas and people who can bring their own ideas and build and make it better. So I would tell any leader, certainly at any time, but certainly in challenging times, you need the best people you can around the table with their expertise, individual expertise, and then you've got to come together collectively.
Your team and my team are here, so amen to that. Okay, total switch of gears. When you get a rare day off, what does your perfect Maine day look like? Where do you go? What do you do? And who are you with?
So I'm with my husband, who is
Good answer.
yes, and particularly that's a challenging answer because he's a professor and he commutes back and forth. So during the summer he's here all summer. During the academic year he's commuting back and forth. So I'm going to assume that he's here. So it's a weekend and a day off. It's likely going to be a weekend. We're going to go to forage. We're going to get some baked goods and in Lewiston. We are going to we're going to check out a game. That's often what we do. Although I guess that doesn't quite make it a day off. So, but
Garry.
or I'm going to play tennis. I'm a tennis player. So that's actually one of the things I do for fun. So certainly that's got to be part of my perfect day is tennis, and then we'll do something, go for a walk. We'll hang out a little bit, and I'm a foodie. So definitely, it's got to involve a great meal. I'm the chef in the family, and to be honest, I'm okay. So really, it would have to be going out, and someone else is doing the cooking. Since we're here at the Roo, I'll mention 12, which is right here, is one of my favorite restaurants. So that's got to be part of the day as well.
Well, that is a great note to end on. It's always nice to imagine the president of Bates enjoying the same Maine experiences as all of us. So thank you, Garry. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you, and thank you all for joining us this morning.
Thank you.